Memetics. Memes are ideas that survive. This is an entirely independent feature of an idea to its truth. An idea can be more or less true and yet still survive. It can be more or less useful to its holder and yet survive. Some ideas, specifically some memes, can cause in their holders behaviours which actually are detrimental to their holders and can actively work against them, frustrating their capacity to solve their own problems. Memetics is the scientific study of memes. Memes are important to understand both in terms of individual psychology as well as in sociology, the understanding of how human society at the level of relationships and institutions works and can evolve over time. But the study of memes is still not taken as seriously as it might be in either psychology or sociology, and yet it is a large part of the story, if not the entire story. Psychology has traditionally been defined as the study of the human mind and behaviour, but rather a lot of behaviour happens because of the memes in the mind of a person, so it is impossible to have a good fundamental explanation of human psychology while completely ignoring what we know so far about memes. So what do we know? Following the insights of David Deutsch as laid out in Chapter 15 of The Beginning of Infinity, and in brief, we know memes can be divided into two broad categories. Being memes, they both tend to get themselves copied, the defining characteristic of a meme, but the mechanism by which they get replicated is different. A rational meme relies on the recipient's critical faculties to get itself replicated. So, for example, good scientific explanations, such as those contained in the field of thermodynamics, tend to get passed from person to person, generation after generation, because those theories solve problems. It is rational for people to want better engines and ways to more efficiently produce electricity and so on. It is rational for people to want to solve their problems, make progress and improve, so the laws of thermodynamics constitute a set of rational memes. They get copied because they solve problems and allow for more progress to be made, so people want to learn those ideas and pass them on. On the other hand, anti-rational memes tend to get themselves copied not because they are useful to the recipient, but the opposite. They are defined by their ability to disable the recipient's critical faculties. For example, a meme that says a particular book is perfect and should never be criticised lest one who does will be cast into eternal fire could be a powerful meme that tends to get copied generation after generation, but not because it is necessarily helping the holder solve more problems. Indeed, the very idea that it cannot be criticised means it cannot be improved, and it can also instill the general sense that sometimes criticism is a bad thing more broadly, so we have to be especially cautious with it. We all have fears, concerns, phobias, and other ways in which we might put up with something that is actually doing us no good, because we have anti-rational memes in our minds. A good psychologist, counsellor, or psychiatrist, even one unfamiliar with the theory of memes, will nonetheless be all about trying to identify some of those anti-rational memes the recipient does not even realise they are holding on to. They will just use different terminology for how they go about finding out what the stumbling block is, so that a solution can be found and progress made. At the level of a society, sociologically speaking, some memes that survive actively help to stabilise a society which undergoes rapid change. One such would be the constitutional monarchy that exists in the United Kingdom and the nations of the Commonwealth. This meme, or even memeplex, which we call the institution of the British monarchy, has benefited the society in which it is found, and to some extent contributes to the definition of British culture itself. When a culture is, broadly speaking, dominated by rational memes, we can call it a dynamic society. The tradition of criticism that typifies the Enlightenment and nations that follow in the Western cultural tradition share a set of memes that, broadly speaking, encourage and value criticism of everything and in all directions, more or less. A culture is, Deutsch writes, a set of ideas that cause their holder to behave alike in certain ways. In the West, this can manifest itself as a general rebellious type nature, more so than in places that tend to reject such a tradition of criticism. In other words, in the West, the culture is that we behave alike by valuing individuality, valuing difference, or in modern parlance, diversity, and diversity of ideas, ideally. But in a society that is dominated by anti-rational memes, progress is not so fast. It slows almost to a standstill. We call such a place a static society. Almost all of human history is a story of static societies that, from the perspective of any individual, almost nothing was seen to ever change in the society all the time from when they were a child until whenever they became old, if they ever got that far. Progress is slow in a static society because people are rewarded not by criticising the existing ideas and authorities, but rather by enacting the memes ever more faithfully. In such a society, rewards come by being more faithful adherents to the authorities and to the existing ideas and standards. Punishments are dished out to those who rebel and show individuality, unlike in a dynamic society where iconoclastic artists, scientists, leaders, innovators and entrepreneurs are more successful when their more unique ideas win in the marketplace of new ideas. Though no society is perfectly static or perfectly dynamic, and all societies must contain a mix of rational and anti-rational memes, today we can see in which directions which societies that remain tend. As individuals, we are not ourselves always aware, even if we live in a dynamic society, how we might nevertheless be held hostage by some anti-rational memes, for there will always be many of those, inexplicit perhaps, ideas we are unable to put into words but cause us to engage in behaviours only because our critical faculties have been disabled. We could understand all of this far better if more progress was made in memetics.